Hey guys, this is not the most serious video I've ever recorded. I used to record this type of material, monologues about my life or real life updates, as podcasts as opposed to videos. But these days, because my upload speed has been fabulous here in China, and because I've been recording sitting at my desk, most of the real life updates have been videos. But if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can also download them as an MP3, as in a portable podcast only format. One of the fun things, I do actually have a portable audio recorder also. So a couple of times I have actually recorded my podcasts while I was in the airport, while I was walking somewhere. Tomorrow I could record a podcast while I'm at the museum. I'm actually going to the museum. So actually one of the other reasons why some of my material is podcast only with no video is that I'm actually not at home when I record it. And you guys know I have a mobile camera also. So there's a little bit of variety in there. But this is a real life update podcast with video if you want to see the video. And I'm also live streaming while I do it. So guys, I do see some people just made some funny jokes in the last 10 seconds actually. I can see and respond to comments from viewers while I'm recording this live. So we'll see. How far can I get in this video without mentioning veganism? But this is not primarily about veganism, not primarily about politics. This is primarily about my real life. And this is being recorded at an interesting moment in my real life because I'm now packing up to leave Kunming. So my life here in Kunming, as I've known it, is coming to an end. And some of you have become very familiar with the view of this bed in the background. Well, it's not forever, people. The view, the bed, the wall, the slightly off-white, the view of my rice cooker. Here, I'll switch. Let's switch the camera. Let's have a one last goodbye to the rice cooker. No, you can't really see it that well back there. Anyway, the books. You notice the books move around. I've been using the books, people. Anyway, the rhythm of my life here in Kunming, which is not a rhythm I could ever really get used to, is coming to an end. So just because it's a natural segue, I've got a couple of things I want to cover here. But I wrote a letter in Chinese, handwritten Chinese, which is very time consuming. The Chinese themselves very rarely write letters in Chinese. But I wrote a letter in Chinese to the staff at my gym. Now, if you've really been following me on YouTube and in the podcast and so on, you will know there was a time a few months ago when I had a really serious crush on one of the gym employees, and my impression was that she was interested in me too. Not going to say too much about that. I guess I'm going to refer to as the short woman at the gym or the short girl at the gym, because it's possible I'm also going to mention some tall women in this monologue. But I wrote this letter today, and it's not personal in any way. It's not coming on to her, and it's not sexy. But I decided to write this letter for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it is a letter of thanks, and the letter closes. The last thing in the letter is that it says, during this time in my life, which as I just said is coming to a close now, during this kind of special time in my life when I was a student learning Chinese in Kunming, the only joy in my life was coming to your gym. Now, obviously, that would be a bit maudlin if it was the first thing I said in the letter, but it's the last thing. That's how the letter closes, so it doesn't sound too bad. Camera's out of focus, guys. Sorry. If you see me moving my hand like this, it's to try to get the camera to come back into focus. Sometimes it focuses on the mic, sometimes it focuses on my face. The tech support here at à-bas-le-ciel Broadcasting Corporation is slightly less than perfect. Anyway, so it is a letter of thanks, a sincere letter of thanks to them. And as I say, it closes by saying, look, during this special time in my life, during the letter it mentions also, the only exercise I had was working out at your gym. The rest of the time I was sitting at my desk, using my computer, studying Chinese, hitting the books. So really, the one kind of joy in my life was coming to your gym, and it's thanking them for that. The letter also goes over because that gym does collect testimonials from their clients. So when I say testimonials, people say they lost 20 pounds or they achieved their goals or whatever the hell it is. So I go over in that handwritten letter in Chinese, what changed in my weight and what my routine is now. So I now do regularly bench press more than I weigh. partly because my weight declined. So I mean, today I was very casually bench pressing 95 kilograms. I could have been bench pressing 100 kilograms, but today I didn't push it because yesterday I worked out really heavy. Not worth digressing. But so I said, well, my weight dropped. I used to be over 100 kilograms. Now I'm down to maybe 92 or 93 actually, and this is how much I bench press, and this is I do so many push-ups per day. So it covered that kind of stuff. But then, as you know, veganism is also covert propaganda for veganism. I got in there. I said, look, maybe you already know this about me, because a lot of people at the gym do know this about me. So maybe you already know this about me, maybe you don't. But I'm vegan. And I know that a lot of people here in China believe that you can't maintain your strength, that you'll lose your strength if you stop eating meat. And I eat no meat, no dairy, no eggs, etc. And I want you to know that I've maintained this level of strength, with no animal products in my diet. So I say, obviously in some ways this is an intellectual exercise for me. It's a way to practice your Chinese, but in some ways also this is sincerely thanking them for the role this gym played in my life, and it's vegan propaganda, and it's a testimonial that they'll use. So jumping ahead, they told me they were going to use it too. So I'm not sure if they're going to use the text, but I took this and I provided them with 2 photographs that most of you guys have already seen. Photographs of me, shirtless pics where I'm showing the shape that I'm in currently. The current pics of me showing the shape I'm in at age 38. This is not what I imagined my life would be like at age 38. Back when I was 28, I didn't think this is what my life would be like at 38. Back when I was 18, I didn't think this would be what my life was like at 38. Not at all. It's not. I didn't think of myself as an athletic person, and I still don't. I'm not. I don't think of myself as an athlete or as an athletic person. Life gets unpredictable if you let it. Anyway, so I had to go to a print shop. This story involves a few different themes. I had to go to a print shop and print out these photographs of myself, the photographs of me with my shirt off. And I took also a photograph of my daughter to get printed out on paper, because the photograph that I had of her that was only on my computer and didn't have on paper. So I go to a photo printing place. Now, don't worry. This story comes back to the gym and comes back to a lot of other thematic issues in my life as I'm now packing up to leave Kunming. I have made videos talking about what I like about Chinese culture, what I appreciate about Chinese culture, several. But I remember one where that's really the title. There are all kinds of things I can say I really positively appreciate about Chinese culture. But I went into the photo shop, and even though it's a small thing, so you pay the money and you wait, it takes time. I had to go to the photo shop, go back to my school, and come back again. And then even when I came back, I still had to wait longer. And just through carelessness and indifference, they got it wrong. The photos were printed out in a way where they just didn't pay attention. They didn't take the 1 second to check. So the edges, like the edge of my face was cut off, the edge of my arms was cut off, and the picture of my daughter, it didn't look quite right. And, I just said to them, look, I'm sorry, this is not good enough. You're going to have to do them again. Again, this is speaking Chinese. Hey, great language practice. And, when I walked out of there, it was no big deal. They did do it again. They didn't fight me on it. They didn't yell at me or anything, which they can in China. They can do that to you. They can scream at you that the photos are good enough and get the hell out or whatever. So they did print them out. So I had to go back to my school and make another trip back. But, when I walked out, I really felt awful. And, and reflecting on why, I knew exactly why. It's not just the photographs, and it's not just that some of the photographs are photographs of my daughter, which obviously there is an emotional connection there. There's an emotional component to that. It's just reminding you of an aspect of Chinese culture that is so depressing and you don't want to deal with, and it's forcing you to face up to it, and I mean, I had a job lined up here Most of you guys don't know this story. Before this job in Dehong was lined up, so the job I'm starting now is at a totally different university. I had a job lined up here, contract signed, 100% certain, 100% committed job lined up here. And the reason given for why this one woman, who was not a senior executive, a woman who was really like a secretary, a minor functionary, why she threw a tantrum and in effect got me fired, got the job eliminated before the job started, was that she was so offended that when she asked me, what hospital would you go to here in China if you got seriously ill, my answer was, I would buy an airplane ticket to Thailand. I would not go to a hospital here in China. That's the truth. If I had a serious illness or a serious problem, I would fly to Chiang Mai or Bangkok and, go to this hospital. Now, allegedly, her nationalism, her sense of national pride in China was offended by this. And long story short, this cost me the job. Now, the long story is way more entertaining. This woman was insane anyway, and several people, including my own teacher, because I had to bring my Chinese teacher in to the negotiations to translate, because this is all happening in fluent Chinese. Several people thought that this woman, part of the reason she was so crazy, that maybe at an earlier stage she had a crush on me. And there was evidence of that, because over a couple of months, what she said to other people about me and how excited she was to meet me, and there was some weird stuff going on. But she was weird, period. I mean, this woman, there were a lot of signs that she had, apart from whether she had a crush on me, she was trouble, no matter how you look at it. Anyway, the first time I met her, when I showed up on the university campus, she was screaming at me for no good reason. Like, as she walked toward me across the courtyard of this university campus, she was screaming at me. And I said to her in a totally calm and self-confident voice, I'm sorry, you can't talk to me that way. I'm a professor at this university. You are going to talk to me as a professor. I said it like that. It was not loud. It was quiet, but it was firm. And she thought she was just going to continue screaming at me, like as we walked back to the office. And I'm not walking. I said, I'm sorry. You're not going to talk to me this way. Okay? I'm an employee here. You have to talk to me with dignity as another employee. You can't scream at me like this. But I mean, hilariously, that was not what cost me the job. It was this issue of the hospital. Now, this links back to the story I'm in the midst of. The same attitude. You hand someone, a set of photographs to print. That's their whole job. Their job is to take those photographs and spend 5 seconds on the computer and get them lined up properly and print them out. And they don't do that. And they don't care. And that the only way for you to get them to do that job is, preferably speaking fluent Chinese, for you to stand over their shoulder and yell at them at every fucking stage of them doing that job. Even though that is their job. They work in the Photoshop, and this is the digital era. All they're doing, it's just like printing out a page of text from a computer. They're just a couple of options. You've got to, check to make sure that the photograph is correctly going to be printed, and then you print it. Compared to what photo developing was 50 years ago, this is incredibly, incredibly simple stuff. And it's the same thing when your life is on the line at a hospital. That same attitude, it's terrifying. If you don't have someone there to watch what the nurse is doing like a hawk, to yell at them at every stage, to check and double check, is that the right medicine? Are you doing the right thing? Why are you doing that now and not later? What's the delay? Why is this happening? It's a kind of horrifying aspect of Chinese life, of life in China. And I can still recognize that horror even when it's in something relatively low pressure, like printing out photographs, as opposed to something tremendously high pressure, as opposed to something where you really rely on other people's competence, like what's going on at the hospital. And of course, my experience with that administrator in that particular university very much falls under the same heading. Like, what was her job? What was I relying on her to do? She, on the day when she freaked out and cost me the job and she was screaming at me, all she had to do was meet me in front of the university, or meet me in the courtyard at the front of the university, walk with me to the office, and then physically handle the paperwork. That was her whole job. Didn't require any thought, didn't require any intelligence, required extremely little competence. I had brought my paperwork. She already had her paperwork. She had to physically put the papers together in order, receiving the papers I gave her. That was it. The contract was signed, the commitment was there for the job and all this stuff. Everything was done. Decisions were made by the executives, people many levels above her. And, anyway, I did get those photos printed out, and I did have this meditation on some of the aspects of Chinese culture I really don't like, and that really can be terrifying. I am reading your comments as I go here, guys. I don't know. The joke about doing the mannequin challenge, I don't know if it's worth replying to all these comments as I go here. So I printed these photos out, my shirtless selfie photos, to be blunt, and I combined them with this letter of thanks that I'd written to the gym, and then I went to the gym, and I did work out at the gym. That's not the part of the story I'm going to tell, though. So I'm in this gym. I've been going to this gym every day for 5 months now? It's been a long time. 5 months, 6 months? It's been a long time of going to the gym. So I'm known. And I know all the staff, and I've noticed some staff have left and new staff have been hired. That's enough time at a gym that you see that kind of thing. And it's funny, it's just ironic. So I know I'm going to talk to this woman whom I formerly had a crush on. And that also, it's funny, you can learn a lot from these interactions, even when nobody's teaching you anything. So this is the same woman, for those of you who have been really watching every video or listening to every podcast, this is the same woman who was mentioned in my very casual and enjoyable conversation with American Unicorn. So if you search for the name American Unicorn, she was another vegan YouTuber, and we kicked off that conversation with talking about, she spends a lot of time at the gym, and I was talking about my gym romance, my crush on this woman at the gym, and that spawned a few memorable quotations. Some people still make fun of me because in reference to this particular woman, I said, look, I have a crush on this woman. Of course she's not vegan. I ask myself, if she told me that as her part-time job, she goes to a slaughterhouse and, slits the throats of cattle for kicks or something, would I lose interest in her? So there was some memorable joking around in reference to the. So I know I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to her and give her this letter, which again is not in any way personal. It's not in any way hitting on her, what have you. And I have, which is also interesting, I have in fact lost interest in her. So there's a question here. Someone asks, are there hot chicks at your gym? Yes. And I've referenced that, in a sense, negatively in many of the discussions about veganism. There's not a single person in my gym that's vegan. And, we have all kinds of... I think most people have that. If you go to a gym, I don't know, unless you live in... Okay, I'm not even going to say. I was going to say unless you live in Scotland. But... some of my best friends are Scottish. Let's stop hating on the Scottish here. But no, most places in the world, there are going to be good-looking people in your gym, and all of them eat meat every day. And some of them are very slim, and some of them are very muscular, and some of them are other shapes and sizes. But no, Veg Gray says that was a fleeting crush. No, it really wasn't, because that was a couple months long. And I'm just going to comment now on why that was, that I might as well say in response to this question. One of the things that really got to me. So that woman I had a crush on, she's not the best looking woman at the gym. And better looking women at that gym flirted with me and really hit on me. And some of them really tried to initiate relationships with me. So there were a lot of good looking women there, and a lot of them paid attention to me. One way or another, struck up conversation with me, what have you. But one of the things about this particular woman, I think I'm calling her the short woman at the gym, one of the things that really, really got to me was seeing her playing with children. So it's not part of her job, but she seems to be the kind of person who's great with kids and likes playing with kids. And friends of hers would go to the gym. It seems to me friends or friends of friends, obviously I don't know the whole story, would ask her to play with their kids while they worked out. And, some of those kids were toddlers, were young children, but, one of them was really more of an infant. And she had obviously done this enough. She had learned different funny ways to kind of modify the gym equipment to, to like make a little swing and put the baby in a swing and swing the baby back and forth. So maybe they're two tethers that are supposed to be used for some kind of yoga or some kind of exercise. But she figured out little ways to make fun things for kids out of the gym equipment. And it was just once, I remember I was bending down to tie up my shoe, and I saw her playing with this, with this baby, with this infant. It wasn't a toddler; it was really a young kid. And wow, that really got to me. So I'm sure she's a woman who has many redeeming qualities, but the good with kids thing, that really got to me. So we got a bunch of fun questions here for me to respond to, enriching this podcast, I hope. Not Curtis asks, do they play awful music in Chinese gyms? My gym plays a lot of Eminem, believe it or not. So that's the white American rapper Eminem. They play a lot of Eminem. I don't know why. You tell me. I use headphones. I listen to my own stuff. So we had another question here from KMB asking, is there anywhere that you go where women don't hit on you? Well, why don't you keep listening? I mean, the other thing is a lot. So when you're talking about conventionally good-looking women here in China, they really expect men to initiate. If a woman is conventionally good-looking here, she expects that if she opens the door an inch, a man is going to run up and kick the door down. Like a man's going to open it the rest of the way. So I have an example that was part of the story I was going to tell here. So when I showed up to give this letter to this woman who I used to have a crush on, and again, in some ways it's not a shallow crush, because the kid thing got to me, seeing her playing with kids. There were other things that really made that an unusually kind of durable and deep crush, although it's just a crush. I showed up at the gym today, and there was a new employee. There was a new girl working there. Now, pretty much all of the employees at the gym are somewhere between good looking and extremely good looking. I mean, that's who gets hired at this gym. But this is very strange because I go to the gym every day. For this girl, it's either her first day at the gym or it could be her second or third day. But I'm there so often, I'm really, really strange. So some of you are don't anticipate the moral of the story here, people. Come on. So anyway, I show up. I've never seen this girl before, so she's definitely new. It's quite possibly her first day on the job. And another reason why I think it might be her first day is that there was this other girl who I call the tall woman. So the short woman and tall woman. Tall woman I did not have a crush on, but there was this woman, the tall woman, who really tried to initiate a relationship with me at one point. And I saw the way her boss and her coworkers reacted to that, because the tall woman, she had tried a couple of times to initiate with me, and it's not worth telling the whole story. For different reasons, it didn't go anywhere. And then one day, at the gym, in front of other employees, they weren't standing right next to us, but they were within eye shot, not within. They could see we were talking, and I'm sure they could hear to some extent the nature of the conversation. This girl really laid her cards on the table. And again, this stuff is very, very culturally specific. But, she asked a bunch of questions. So, I mean, again, this is just one example. But this is totally sensible. I don't resent Chinese women for asking this question. If a Chinese woman is really interested in you, she is going to ask, quite close to the start of the conversation where she's initiating, she's going to ask, do you have a girlfriend? And then she's going to follow that up one way or another by asking, do you have a girlfriend back in Canada? Do you have a girlfriend in Beijing? Like, you know what I mean? Because a lot of guys, a lot of girls also, if you ask them, do you have a girlfriend or do you have a boyfriend? They will interpret that to mean, do you have a girlfriend right here, right now? Like, do you have a girlfriend within 5 kilometers or within 500 meters? Like, oh yeah, I'm single today. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm single within a 5-kilometer radius of where we're having this conversation. So they will ask, one way or another, they will ask, do you have a girlfriend? And then, do you have a girlfriend waiting for you back in Canada or waiting in Shanghai or waiting in Beijing or somewhere else? So, again, and it's funny because when she got to that part, and again, it's not just how she asked, it's not the fact that she asked, it's also the way that she's asking it, right? If you really understand Chinese culture, it's very clear that she's initiating a relationship. And I remember when she did that, I knew what's up. I understand Chinese culture enough in terms of the facial expressions and all these kind of funny nuances. But the other employees who were watching, they kind of stood up disapprovingly, and they actually interrupted. They said to her, hey, stop, you have to go do something, like in the gym, which she did. Of course, they have nothing to do. Like, the employees at the gym, in the morning, they open the place up. At night, they have to close it down. But for hours and hours, they're standing around doing nothing. No offense, but they have a few little jobs, but they're not busy. But anyway, I remember there was the attitude of the other people said, we'll break it up. So I think they disapprove of the employees hitting on the customers. I have no idea what they think about customers hitting on the employees. I never asked. But it was a funny and telling little example. But anyway, so I show up to deliver this letter to the short woman, totally different woman from the tall woman. And there happens to be a new member of staff there. And this new member of staff, so the geometry of the gym is a bit weird, but I'm walking past her in a kind of long trajectory to get from one piece of equipment to the other. And she's looking straight at me and smiling with a really big, bright smile. She's beautiful, but I mean, like I said, pretty much everyone at this gym is beautiful. And she's smiling and looking straight in my eyes, and then she starts laughing also in this, very feminine laugh. Now, I'm going to be straight with you. This is 2016. If somebody is laughing for no reason in 2016, I assume either they just read something funny on their phone, or like, even though she didn't have headphones, like they're listening to something, like, what I mean? If you see someone laughing for no reason, I assume there's some technology, they can be watching a movie or something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. And also, I'm there to work out. I got a lot of other things in my mind. Like, I don't really care. But it was the funniest thing. So the new girl, I'm walking past her, and like, she's looking straight at me. She's looking into my eyes, fine. I'm walking from one piece of gym equipment to the other. And, as it becomes clear, I'm just going to walk right past her without talking to her. Her whole expression changes. And it stops being inviting. It stops being come hither. She's actually shocked that I'm not talking to her. She's shocked that I didn't initiate a conversation. This is what I want to, at the end of this, is what I want to conclude on. This is part of the madness of middle age. In middle age, you get really into the subtlety of how much is expressed through the eyes and facial expressions. And, I think a lot of modern American filmmaking is like that. The last season of Game of Thrones to come out, 2016 season. People were freaking out over these scenes where nobody says anything. Jamie looks at Cersei, and we're all supposed to interpret the expression on his face, interpret the look in his eyes. That's what a lot of people get into. It's a weird kind of madness that creeps up on you in middle age, where you begin to savor how subtle those things were. And anyways, I walked past her, but even then I noticed. And then I turned around and looked over my shoulder. And she had indeed turned all the way around, her whole body, and was looking at me like... To her, it was obvious that her... Just by looking at me and smiling and laughing, wherever she comes from, and then probably she's thinking of being at a bar or something. It's not a bar, it's a gym. It's not a bar. I'm not there to meet women. I'm not. And she is a very good-looking girl. I'm sure that her experience and her culture is that all it takes is to smile at a man like that. And again, like I say, if she opens the door a little bit, she expects the man to come and kick the door open. Like she expects all men, or all unmarried men, to respond to that kind of very mild suggestion that she's interested in talking to you by running over and sparking something up. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, if you're actually at a bar, or if you're actually at a singles event, or even a coffee shop, she's probably not wrong. That's her culture. That's where she comes from, and that's what she's about. But from my perspective, it's like, she's got a pretty face, but she's just another pretty face. I have no reason to talk to her. I have no reason to be interested in her, right? But anyway, so this is another minor thing that reminded me of all these kind of aspects of Chinese culture that surround me. So again, this is cool. I can respond. So Ashton says, "Good move. Don't game at the gym." So this relates to another piece of advice I gave someone here on YouNow just a couple days ago. But we had a woman on who was a lesbian, just in the crowd among my fans, and she at first didn't mention she was a lesbian, but she said there was someone she had a crush on at work, and the person she had a crush on at work, she was hesitant to try to initiate a relationship because it was at the workplace. And I compared it to the gym. I said to her, actually, the problem with the workplace isn't initiating one relationship. The problem is you can only ever initiate one relationship. So I say the same thing about the gym. At my gym, if I try to date one of the employees, that's okay. Never two, never three. If you try to initiate a relationship with 3 different women who all work at the same gym, then you're perceived as the guy who's trying to sleep with everybody, right? Or the guy who's trying to talk to, who's trying to spark things up with every employee at the gym. No, you can do it with one. Period. And I mean, at the workplace is like, the gym is a workplace. I mean, for the employees, it is their workplace. Remember, if I take a girl out on a date from the gym, all of the other employees are going to know that. And they're all going to remember me as the guy who went on a date with Tina. And they're all going to remember Tina as the girl who went on a date with the white guy, with the bald white guy or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's it, right? Yeah, just laughing. We had a good joke there in the comment section that is not worth translating into video and podcast. This is good though. All right. So my point was at the workplace, and these things cast a long shadow. So I think if you're going to hit on one person at your gym, that's a big decision. And don't get into plural. Don't get into numbers. Not at the same gym. Like, for real, because if you think about it, if you have a relationship with just one employee at the gym, whether it goes well or it goes badly, that's already a reason for you to quit and go to a new gym. Because if you keep going there, like let's say you just go on 3 dates with someone who's an employee at your gym, really you should quit and go to a new gym. Because you're fucking up her workplace. You're fucking up the whole dynamics of how she relates to the other employees, how she relates to the other customers, the other people training. You don't want to bring that energy into that room, right? So go get a new gym. So in that sense, it's high risk, high stakes, and there are big consequences for just sparking up one romance at the gym, and you can't get into two or three. So that's my response to that. I'm not totally opposed to meeting someone at the workplace. I'm not totally opposed to meeting someone at the gym. It's got to be someone. One, not two, not three. If you want two or three different yoga instructors, go to two or three different gyms. Can't be at the same gym. Cannot. Because they all got to work with each other too, right? And at one point, the short woman and the tall woman, they were both interested in me. And I didn't know if they were talking to each other or what, right? So that's also weird. It's like, okay, so there are two women at this gym and they kind of know each other. So what are they saying to each other about me? Anyway, a long time previous, the short woman. So the short woman was the one I really had the crush on, as has already been discussed at some length here. And, the short woman, at one point, I did go up to her and give her a note, which was totally not personal. And what the note was just a folded up version of the poster that's been mentioned on YouTube before, mentioned on before. This poster saying that I was looking for a language exchange partner. And at that time, I thought the short woman, she spoke pretty good English. This was apparently a complete illusion. Today, she didn't seem to be able to say anything in English. And, there have been a couple of different times when the short woman, when she really got flustered, she just seemed interested in me and seemed flustered. But I don't know. I mean, is what it is. As I've already said in very short, I did basically lose interest in her at one point. But there was a point at which I was very interested in her. And, at least she was interested in talking to me. Doesn't mean anything more than that. I'm not in an ego trip about it one way or the other. But anyway, so I go up to her today, and I have this letter folded up. As I've already said, this letter, and it said on the front, so it's folded up, but even in its folded form, it says in Chinese, like, this is a letter of appreciation. Like, this is a letter of thanks, like giving thanks to the gym. So it's very obvious it's not a love letter. It's very obvious it's not proposition. But it was really, you could really see the minute I walked up to her, and she seemed to just be hanging out with a friend at the gym. Like she wasn't exercising, she wasn't doing anything. So at first I thought, is this a bad time? But then I saw, I was like, oh no, okay, it is actually a good time. So I walk over, because she's doing nothing. She's just chatting with someone. And I said, hey, and I give her the letter. I don't say much more than that. I say, hey, look, you can read this letter yourself, and if you think it's more appropriate, you can give it to your boss. Like, you can give it to the owner of the gym, whatever. But she's pretty much the boss there. Anyway, she's one of the bosses, whatever. But it was so funny. You could see, she was really flustered and concerned. She hadn't read the letter yet. She didn't know what it said and this kind of thing. And there was this really weird period of time in the gym where she had the letter and she was, oh, okay. And she kind of put it away right away. You don't know what she's imagining or what she's thinking. And where she didn't read it, and I mean, like most gyms, it's set up in a weird way. And I start working out. I start lifting weights and doing push-ups and doing this other stuff. And she's, looking around the corner at me and, very, very human, very peculiar situation. And, we're talking about leather shoes before. I mean, like, in terms of traditional Chinese culture, if I really wanted to initiate a relationship with this woman, the thing to do would be to buy her an expensive leather purse. That's 2016. That's normal Chinese culture. And the really fucked up thing is, because women here, including women who hit on me, women who try to start a relationship, women avoid admitting that they have a boyfriend or that they have a husband even. Even if she had a boyfriend, she would accept the purse and she would show it off in front of her boyfriend and say, hey, this handsome foreigner has such a crush on me. He bought me this purse. I mean, there's so many aspects of Chinese culture I'm never going to participate in. And in a sense, that's why I feel so positively about Chinese culture, is just that most of the stuff I dislike is not part of my life in any way. So anyway, again, this is the kind of thing you really get into in middle age, is, reading emotions and the look in the eyes and the tone of voice and these weird suggestions. But then, I don't know, for like 20 minutes or something, she hasn't read the letter. But it's funny because for a couple of months now, I'd say more than one, maybe 2 months, I haven't been interested in her. She hasn't been interested in me. I may be getting the number of months wrong, but there was a time not so many months ago when I was really interested in her. And as I say, I had trouble reading her, but, she was at least interested in talking to me. And she responded in a very flustered way, and, there was something going on. But anyway, so many months have gone past. That's another interesting thing about this. I mean, I think so many people, they get a crush on somebody and then they leave town and circumstances change. But this is a situation where, like, she and I have been seeing each other in skin-tight clothing every day for 6 months. That's pretty weird. Like, we've been making eye contact with each other in nearly nude outfits. I mean, she wears spandex. She wears incredibly revealing clothing every day. And, like, again, back when there was more interest, like a couple months ago, and at least everybody, yo, hey, what's up? Yeah. Little chit-chat, but, like, never, whatever. It's a gym. You don't want to fucking, But anyway, it just was funny because it seemed to me like suddenly all of her behavior, she was suddenly so alert and looking at me and interested in me and so on. Now, obviously, at some point, she stopped what she was doing and went into her office and actually read the letter, right? Now, I have to imagine it came as a surprise to her what this letter said, because the letter is not hitting on her, not at all, right? And again, I mean, I don't know, like... culturally, a lot of Chinese women, they have a role they want you to play, and either you're going to play that role or they don't want to hear it. And that actually fits into, if you guys saw my earlier video talking about the booty call messages at 2 a.m., there are a lot of Chinese women who do not want to meet me for coffee, who only want to meet me at 2 a.m. Not for coffee. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of it also, is like all the stuff that maybe makes me interested or appealing to a Western woman, all the complications, like, oh, this is what I study, this is, like, this is my research, this is my engagement with animal rights and veganism, just stuff that makes you human, stuff that makes you interesting. A lot of the Chinese women respond to that with like, yeah, I don't want to know. Like, yeah, that's all the stuff I'm not going to hear about, I'm not going to deal with, I'm going to call you at 2 a.m. They have some role preconceived for you, and you're going to play that role. Now, another thing in terms of urban 21st century Chinese culture, a lot of women will basically force their relationship to be like a one-night stand, even if that's as a prelude to transitioning to a meaningful relationship. So I'm not hating the player of the game, just saying culturally, that's kind of like the exact opposite of what we kind of try to go for in Western culture. I think in Western culture, what a lot of people want to avoid is feeling like it's a one-night stand. A lot of people want to avoid the feeling that you're disposable or easily replaced, especially at the beginning of the relationship. But in a sense, I think you could say a lot of Chinese culture embraces the one-night stand, and then it's like the one-night stand may or may not be a gateway into them dealing with or even acknowledging the other complexities of who you are, your research, your job, the fact that you're vegan or whatever else, right? Whatever would make you a good or bad boyfriend, what have you. Anyway, so I only imagine maybe she felt some mix of like relief and disappointment when she got to her office and read this letter and realized that this was not me confessing my undying love for her or anything. Oh, camera's out of focus a little bit. Let's Morty, get on it. Get the camera back in focus, Morty. Tech support. And she came out and she said, a bunch of things to me in Chinese, and she seemed to not be able to speak English at all. Previously she had spoken English. And again, it was funny because one of the reasons why I think she thought the letter was a big deal, this handwritten letter, was that the first time I gave her something on paper, which as I mentioned was actually the poster of me, it's just the poster explaining that I'm looking for language exchange partners. I'm looking for someone who wants to practice their English, and I want to practice my Chinese, which could have been her. And as I say, at the time, she at least pretended she could speak English. I really don't like the fact the camera's out of focus, but I don't want to slow down too much here. I remember she read that with the other staff, which is normal. So, she had it open in front of the other staff, and the other people, came over and read over her shoulder, and they read it together and, passed it around, which is totally appropriate. It's fine, but everyone looked at it. And this time, I know she saw it. It was a big deal. She put it away. She hid it away. And, none of the other staff saw it, right? And again, I wasn't doing this to hit on her, but this letter did include those 2 photographs of me with my shirt off that all you guys have seen, the same photographs that I put up here on YouTube just the other day, showing the shape I'm in, because that was what the letter was about. Anyway, she came out and she told me that, she's going to put my photo on their poster. So, they've got like a poster for their testimonials, their success stories, and they're going to use some aspect of my story. And they're going to give me some kind of prize. They're going to give me, I think, like a jacket like this that has their logo on it. So, to thank me for my testimonial, they're going to do some stuff like this. I was like, all right, cool. All right. I guess I officially endorse your gym. It's cute. The moral I wanted to draw to this story is twofold. Thanks, Marty. Thanks for helping out. I think the camera just came into focus too, appropriately enough. On the one hand, there's just this kind of overriding issue of middle age and of look, this along with the non-relationship I just had with this woman who I met at the train station on their last day here, blah blah blah. So I took her to the train station. A lot of you guys will remember that story, some of you won't, but it's funny, but I guess what's rewarding about these things is the feeling that you're learning from the experience. And at age 38, I do still feel that I'm learning from these experiences, which is self-interesting, But it's it is also this strange madness of middle age where you just seem to appreciate more this range of very subtle emotions that you might have ignored as a teenager or scoffed at in your 20s, where you really want to revel in the sort of subtle uncertainties of these situations as they unfold. And of course, the other big conclusion for me here, when I first came here to China, I remember saying to my own teacher very bluntly and very explicitly, I never want to marry a Chinese woman. I never even want to have a Chinese girlfriend. I really do not want to be part of this culture in that way. And in this monologue, you have probably already heard, just in passing, many, many of the reasons why I felt so strongly and felt so certain I don't want a Chinese girlfriend, I don't want a Chinese wife, that Chinese culture is really just not compatible with what I'm about in that way. Although, as I've said before, there are many, many things I like about Chinese women. There are many, many things I like about Chinese culture. There are many things I like about being an intellectual, being a scholar, being someone who cares about history and politics in Chinese culture. There are many things that are good about being vegan in Chinese culture. There are many, many things I like about Chinese culture. But I do not want to marry into Chinese culture, and I don't even want to date. I really don't. As I mentioned, I don't ever want to buy someone a purse. It's ridiculous to me. And I don't want to, you guys heard this. It was a hilarious video with me complaining about getting the booty call messages at 2 a.m. I don't want, Jesus Christ. I don't want to get the call. I don't want to respond to the call. I don't want to show up at a hotel at 2 a.m. to hook up with a stranger. Jesus. And none of those, anyway. So much. And by the way, I got another email, again, actually from a lesbian viewer, different lesbian, not the one I was mentioned before. There was another lesbian who wrote to me saying that it was striking to her, that video. She said that specific video about the 2 a.m. booty calls and all that stuff. She said it's amazing that her experience as a white Western lesbian in China is the same. The bunch of things I complained about in that video. She said the one-sided conversations and the booty calls and people trying to sleep with you, but they're not willing to have coffee with you, and where it's the exact opposite of our expectations of like the expectation I want to get to know you and feel I can trust you before I sleep with you. It's like, no, the opposite. It's like, no, let's remain strangers. This kind of thing. That was interesting. That was a white lesbian perspective on dating in China, and saying, wow, a lot of the same, to a striking extent, a lot of the same problems. And she ended it by saying, like, hooray for gender equality, because apparently the lesbian situation is the same as the situation for men. That was interesting to hear. I guess I can wrap it up by saying, when I showed my teacher that handwritten letter, for corrections, to correct any mistakes I made in the grammar or what have you, her comment was just, it's really sad. The letter. And she was really just referring to the last sentence, which is true. The letter ended by saying, this is now the end of my time in Kunming. I've been here for so many months, and this is a special time in my life. I said at the end of the letter, this gym, obviously I can only express myself imperfectly in Chinese anyway. This gym will become a happy memory for me. While I lived in Kunming, during this time in my life, studying Chinese, this gym was the only pleasure in my life. It was the only thing I had to enjoy, And it's true in the original Chinese. That is a little bit bittersweet at best, the connotations of the particular words that come across. There was one guy here who, he pitched a little bit of a fit. He was an idiot. I despised him. There was an American guy here who was one of the other students, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation started, but he said something to me like, but that's why you love learning Chinese, right? Like, but that's why you want to learn Chinese. Something about Chinese being wonderful, and ascribing to me that this is why I want to learn Chinese. I don't know. That's not why I want to learn Chinese. I said, I don't want to learn Chinese at all. Which was true then, and it's true now. This is not what I chose in life. This is in many ways fundamentally the opposite of what I chose in life. This is everything that I wanted to avoid being forced on me by circumstances beyond my control. I don't want to be living in China. I don't want to be learning Chinese. I do want to be studying languages, but Chinese is the wrong language. And another conversation with someone who was a Tibetan, and I remember this Tibetan was talking to me, and excited about my knowledge of politics and history, but of course Buddhism. If you guys watch the channel, I know a lot about Buddhism. And I had to say to this Tibetan, look, I know we have a lot to talk about, but my whole life is about avoiding Tibet. I want nothing to do with Tibet. I want nothing to do with Tibetan politics. I want nothing to do with Tibetan Buddhism. I don't want to study Tibetan as language. You don't get it. I know more than the average Westerner about Tibet. I do, obviously, way more than the average Westerner, but it's not my area of expertise, not my area of interest. It's the opposite. So, but to come back to that anecdote, I remember, sitting there at the breakfast table with the other students, I just said to this guy 100% bluntly, 100% honestly, said, I don't want to be learning Chinese at all, but I'm born with a Canadian passport, and I'm stuck with it. And because I'm Canadian, I ultimately did not have the option to study any of the languages I was passionate about learning. I was forced again and again to sacrifice all of my hopes, all of my aspirations, all of my dreams, all of my career plans because of the incredibly poor quality of the education system in Canada and the incredibly narrow possible career paths open to me. It wouldn't be the same if I were born a French citizen. It wouldn't be the same if I were born an American citizen or even a German citizen. But because I'm Canadian, I couldn't continue with Lao, I couldn't continue with Cambodian, I couldn't continue with Burmese, I couldn't continue with Sinhalese, I couldn't continue with Thai, I couldn't continue with Cree, I couldn't continue with Ojibwe, and those two I feel the most bitterly as a Canadian, Cree and Ojibwe being indigenous to Canada. Everything I spent years and years of my life developing expertise in, not even to mention Pali, I had to sacrifice, and I had to start with this language that I don't merely lack interest in, that I actively don't want to learn, that I never wanted to learn, that I chose again and again to avoid learning. This is everything I wanted to avoid in my life, and I've been forced to accept it. That's why I'm living now in China. And I didn't say this at the time, but also, I didn't even want to learn Chinese in China. I wanted to continue in Canada. I was getting a university degree in Canada, but I couldn't do that for the same reason, because of the abysmally low quality of my education in Canada. So there are a lot of things I appreciate about Chinese culture. There are a lot of things I appreciate about China. It's always somewhat hilarious to me when people think I have a kind of glamorized view of Chinese culture or China, because it's the opposite. But I'm here learning a language I don't want to learn, doing a job I don't want to do, in a sense, developing a career in an area of expertise I don't want to have, in the surreal circumstances of my slow motion divorce unfolding in France. We think also my slow motion court case unfolding in Thailand. All these other bizarre things in framing the situation. And I'm sacrificing so much in my life to learn a language I don't want to learn, and to learn to pretend to be a part of a culture I don't even want to pretend to be a part of. I don't want to marry into this culture. I don't want to date in this culture. And, the guy I said this to at that breakfast, he was really offended. And he was an ignorant ass white guy who converted to Buddhism, to Zen Buddhism, the worst kind of Buddhism. He was an ignorant ass white boy who converted to Buddhism and who obviously had glorified and glamorized notions about Chinese culture. And he took it up with me later too. Like at another time, I went out to lunch with him, and he sat down and he was like, "Well, it's very obvious you don't like Chinese, like as a language. Like you don't." It's like, yeah, you want me to lie to you? You want me to pretend this is a special or wonderful language? To me, it's not. It's it's just another language, and it's in many ways an especially terrible language. And it's not a language that leads to any kind of a bright future for me or for my daughter. It doesn't lead to any kind of employment in Canada. It doesn't lead to any kind of master's degree or PhD or anything else. In many ways here in China, I know day after day I'm digging my own grave. I'm destroying any possibility of me having a positive future. And I would be earning more money if I got a job at Starbucks, or as a waiter, or stocking the store shelves at a grocery store, or working at a gas station in Canada, rather than what I'm doing here in China, even though what I'm doing here in China may be more intellectually pretentious or may seem more impressive in my resume in some ways. So, that's the incredibly grim reality surrounding and underlining that one line in that handwritten letter that I gave to the girl at the gym today. That during this time in my life, going to your gym was my only pleasant distraction, was my only pleasure.